So I had a great experience this week with Claude. I was building a web app that had to play audio, but the audio was not playing. And when I asked Claude about it, Claude said the code looked good. And it's very hard to tell just looking at the code. I thought it would be the perfect time to try out Playwright MCP server, which lets Claude actually use Google Chrome, because that's the only way to know if the audio is playing or not. And it worked. It figured out what was wrong and fixed it.
The reason I like Playwright specifically for the browser stuff, but you could test and prove out backend stuff too using end-to-end wise using the browser to prove that an API is working.
I'm wondering what the pros and cons are, right? Because on the one hand, there's a group of people who believe that it automated tests, but on the other hand, you would never catch any new bugs that way. And if you use Claude, it'll presumably play the game of memory slightly differently every single time. And is that good or is that bad? Probably good to do both.
Because I am aware of certain companies where they're paying freelancers just to be testing full-time QA people. For them, I can see this being very attractive.
Okay, hello. Today we're going to talk about how to use Claude Code and Playwright MCP to operate a browser to do interesting things like play games and help with web development tasks like find bugs and fix issues and just help with debugging. I have Philip here today and also Dustin and Josh. Philip, you want to give us an introduction of what you're going to work on?
Yeah, so I had a great experience this week with Claude. I was building a web app that had to play audio, but the audio was not playing. And when I asked Claude about it, Claude said the code looked good. And it's very hard to tell, right, just looking at the code, whether audio is playing or not. So I thought it would be the perfect time to try out the Playwright MCP server, which lets Claude actually use Google Chrome, because that's the only way to know if the audio is playing or not. And it worked. It figured out what was wrong and fixed it. I put together a little demo today of an example of that workflow, if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
All right, so first I went to the GitHub MCP registry, and these are like curated ones from GitHub, so I know that they're good. And the Playwright run is right at the top. You can automate your web browser using Claude. And so then I built a game of memory, right? So when you're a kid, you'll recognize this game. There are 9 cards. There are 4 pairs of planets. And if you click them, they flip over. So this looks like Neptune or Uranus, maybe, and then try to find them. So that's probably the Pluto. Oh, there we go. So I found 1 planet. And if I keep going, oh, 2 planets. But I put a bug into this game. So if I keep going, I can't actually click the middle card. Maybe you can't see that. But I've made a bug so the middle card is unclickable. And this is something that I feel that you might not notice just looking at the code, right? But you notice it when you're in the browser playing the game. So it's the perfect test for Claude. So let me show you that real quick. So here in the card component, I just have this, right? Bug. If card position is 4, return. So that stops the card from flipping. And Claude doesn't know I did this. Right? I just did it. And I'm going to open up my prompt here. And here's the prompt I'm going to use. So Claude, use the Playwright MCP server to open Google Chrome and play the game of memory in the browser at my localhost. If you encounter a bug, diagnose the problem and fix it. Verify the fix, then continue playing the game until the end. So that's the whole prompt. I'm not telling it that there's a bug where the 4th card in the middle doesn't flip, right? So I have Google Chrome over here. And what happens when you have your MCP server set up is there's an extension here. And if you give it a second, it's going to pop up and ask if you want to allow Claude to connect to Google Chrome. So let's give that just a second. All right, so here it is. I'm going to allow that, and it's loaded the game of memory. So I'm going to take my hands off the keyboard. I'm not doing anything. And we're going to let Claude play and see if it encounters a bug. It'll then try to fix it, verify that it's fixed, and keep going. All right, so it's flipped over the first card. And you can see on the left, I see a grid of 3x3 cards with 9 elements. It's going to tell you what it's doing. Oh, it says the card didn't flip. Right, so it probably clicked the middle card. So it's trying some other cards now. So it shows Neptune. Oh, it's taking some screenshots, by the way, which is also very nice as it goes through. And this is going to take a minute or two because it has to go through all the cards and play the entire game. All right, so it says it's investigating a bug. Let's click the middle card, see if there's an issue. All right, so it says middle card position 5. Right, and my code is position 4 because it's 0 indexed. All right, so it's taking a screenshot of what it thinks is the bug, which is the middle card not flipping. It says I can clearly see the bug now. The middle card is showing da da da. It's checking the card component. It says it found the bug. Oh, there, you can see the diff, right? So it deleted that part of the code that says the card doesn't flip. It says it's fixed the bug. Let me update my to-dos and refresh the browser and then verify that the fix works. So it refreshed. If you didn't see that, it was very fast. All right, so now, oh, look, the middle card flipped. So there we have Neptune or whatever. So now it takes a screenshot of the middle card fixed, right? So you could imagine these screenshots being uploaded into your PR review or something. All right, so it's got through the first 4 to-dos, and now it's going to complete the game until the end. So let's see how well it does with memory. All right, so it found those 2. All right, looks like Mars. There it is. By the way, one thing that's funny about this is that Claude is cheating because it can see the HTML, so it knows where the
Yeah.
Mars ones are. So it's a little bit funny. It's not perfectly like a human, but it's still fun to watch.
It's interesting what would have happened, like in the code you marked in that comment, like you marked it as a bug.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
contrived, but I wonder what would have happened if it found that you couldn't click that middle card, and then it goes and figures out why, and then it says, "Oh, there's actually code that dictates this behavior." Would it have tried to fix it, or would it have recognized that? Would have asked for clarification, basically. Is this intentional, or is this
I think it was
an
smart
actual
enough.
issue?
I think it was smart enough because remember, I didn't tell it that the middle card wouldn't flip. It was playing the game.
Right.
And all right, so here we go. Let's look at the summary. It opened the game. It found and fixed a bug where the middle card wouldn't flip. It verified the fix and it completed the game. And then the one other thing I want to show you is here. There's a little folder called Playwright MCP, and it shows you the screenshots as it's going along. So this is state 1. This is state 2. I guess the middle card is not plugged. It has a bug here. Some of these look the same, but there. So now it shows it's fixed with the middle card flipping, and then the game is completed. So you can follow along. If you're not watching live, you can follow along later with the screenshots that it takes. But yeah, so as you say, it is very contrived. But the reason I did this was for this podcast. And as I said, I had a real bug this week, right, where the audio wasn't playing, and I didn't know why. And Claude was able to figure it out once it was in the browser.
So what prompt did you use for that, right? Because do you just, in this case, do you just, again, just describe a basic user story and say, I want you to go through and do these different steps and then identify whether or not there's
Well,
sound playing at this time? Or did you just kind of tell it to explore on its own? What did that prompt look like in your real bug situation?
yeah. I guess there's 2 differences because in real life, I saw the bug myself. So I told it that the audio wasn't playing. And so I said, click the play button, right, verify there's no audio, then figure out why. So I was leading it on. But that's totally fine, right? Because I found the bug myself. And in real life, it was more complicated, right? It was some sort of React tree with the component not rendering and things like that. But because I saw that happen, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Because there's a class of problems or challenges where looking at the code isn't enough. Right? You have to actually use the app. And I was going to think, I thought it would be really janky, right? Really janky. Like maybe you could barely click on something, but it's not janky at all, and it worked fantastic.
This has my gears turning for using this not just for debugging an issue and you have the code right there, but can you use Claude Code or and this kind of thing to just do a test matrix like a human would do, run through a set of use cases and test that these 5 basic things work on my web app. And then also maybe give it access to your bug tracker so that it can file issues if it finds anything as it runs through the 5 test cases or something like that.
I'm wondering what the pros and cons are, right? Because on the one hand, there's a group of people who believe that automated tests, should run exactly identically every single time, right? You might even seed your random number generator so everything's identical. And then you never get, oh, it passed 9 times in a row and then failed the 10th time for some weird reason. But on the other hand, you would never catch any new bugs that way. And if you use Claude, it'll presumably play the game of memory slightly differently every single time. And is that good or is that bad? It's probably good to do both.
I could see definitely for established workflows or like different established code paths that are foundational to your app, right? That seems like you want a CI/CD like Selenium or some kind of automation tool to handle those edge cases.
Mm-hmm.
I could see like right off the bat, like if I'm working on a feature like a new login flow, right? Or if I'm doing a 2FA flow or something like that, a good chunk of doing stuff like that is I'm going to build it and I need to manually test it and I need to cover all these different edge cases and that takes time, right? Similarly, if I'm doing a PR review for somebody and like part of my task is to verify that that branch is actually working, right? It would be nice just to be able to hook it up to MC, pull everything down, kick off the MCP server and do a prompt, right? And give it those user stories and just have it work in the background and uncover those. And that frees me up to where I'm not spending an hour of my dev time clicking around doing that test matrix that Scott just talked about. I can just do an impromptu user session while I'm working on actual logic. That's interesting.
Yeah, potentially you could have like multiple of these running in the background, testing all the scenarios.
Yeah. An interesting thought experiment is, will the cost go to zero? Because if you had Claude running all day, every day, 100 of them, it'd be very expensive.
Very expensive.
But will the cost go to zero like all technology has in the past? In which case you could just have 10 users using your site all the time, like a human. And then these 10 users would say, oh, this is confusing, or I've discovered something that's changed, I don't like it. And it'd be an entirely new feedback loop than the 100 tests that we made a year ago still pass.
Probably cost doesn't even need to go to zero because I am aware of certain companies where they're paying freelancers just to constantly be testing current features or new features on a specific website. And so for those, maybe there's smaller companies or companies that aren't right now hiring like full-time QA people. For them, I can see this being very attractive.
Yeah. The cost doesn't necessarily need to be zero. It could just be like comparable, or it could just, or it's still high, but it's fungible. So you just turn it on, use it for a little bit. It's very high, but then you turn it off versus like it's constantly running 24/7. You just do it for bursts.
Yeah. But and also, so we've been talking about testing, right? Not just testing, but building. And one thing that's funny to me is how different the AI is from humans sometimes. Like you saw it was cheating, playing memory by looking at the HTML, but also how similar it is to humans sometimes. So I discovered that when I'm doing things with like CSS, right? Claude gets it wrong all the time because CSS is confusing, right? And Claude will say, yeah, sure, I've centered the element. And I look at the page, it's not centered at all. But there's no way to tell unless you actually look at it in a browser. And it's that feedback loop that makes Claude powerful, right? If you can say, iterate, right? Do a for loop, right? Make this change, refresh the browser, see if it's correct, fix it, iterate over and over again. And that way it once it can confirm that it's correct, right? Which is really important for using an AI.
Speaking of debugging, I've so I haven't used I've only used the Playwright to, like you said, verify work as it's iterating over
Mhm.
UI pieces. As far as debugging goes, does Playwright expose like all dev tools to Claude? So like it has access to the console, does it have access to the network tab? Can it monitor requests and see what responses are as it's coming in? Or is it literally like this the surface level I can point and click? Do the
I
HTML,
don't
so
know.
it's got to
Yeah.
have some,
It has a lot of
yeah.
access, and the reason I know that is because it bypasses all the Google Chrome restrictions. You have to enable developer mode to even install the Playwright extension, which makes perfect sense because it's for developers, but it's not like sandboxed like other extensions are. So I think it has access to a lot.
Definitely like inspecting the DOM tree and going into like the elements and using selectors.
Yeah. Yeah, it can select HTML and it can run JavaScript at the very least. And it definitely looks at the console output because I was asking it for that, like with the
Okay.
audio issue I was having. So yeah, it has a lot of
Yeah. So
access.
I'm wondering what it does have access as far as like network goes or
Yeah.
session storage. Can it grab tokens and all that stuff?
The audio one, the audio experiment you did was interesting. I'm not sure if it can actually tell like audio is playing, but it was able to, I think it's able to use JavaScript to inspect the APIs to ask the audio API of the browser, is something currently playing? Yes. Or
Right. So I do seeing the differences, right? And it can observe events, right? So the audio fires an event whenever the audio is changed, so it can confirm that those events are happening, right? Or I can say, look at the like our in the app I'm talking about, there's a circle that goes around as the audio progresses, right? It could check that, is the circle going around or not, things like that. And it might not just be the browser, by the way. Think how lucky we are that all these things came together right. So the web is all plain text, it's all open source. It runs anywhere, right? Windows, Mac, Linux, iPhone, Android. And if it wasn't for these things, imagine it was the proprietary Apple App Store or something, right? Like we probably couldn't have a Playwright MCP unless Apple sanctioned it, right? And so I think that's why the web is starting. But I'm thinking about the future, right? You could imagine, why just control the browser? Why not control your computer?
yeah. Do you know if there's an MCP for controlling like a native, like an iOS simulator or Android emulator?
I haven't looked yet,
I did.
but I didn't see it on the official
Yeah,
GitHub
I did
page.
a
So
search for that when we started an earlier project, and I didn't see anything that was either well documented or really advertised as a viable production instrument. But it'd be lovely if
Yeah,
one
because we
existed.
need that
Yeah.
for it would be useful to have that for mobile app dev.
What I have been able to do though is for Android development. I know it's not React Native, but for ADB, it can access the
mm,
CLI, and then you've
yeah.
got access to the logcat, starting and stopping sims. And so there is some stuff you can do there. I don't know if I tried doing any kind of screenshotting, but if the CLI allows it, it would be able to do it via the CLI and not necessarily MCP server.
I have another quick thought, and that is in the world of LLM design principles, there's this concept of human in the loop where you're having your LLM do some sort of work, and then you have your trusty human to approve what has been done. But watching this, I'm really amazed to see how much work we can just offload to Claude and have it happen. So I wonder if this is trying to replace this pattern, or is it allowing the human just to work at a higher level of like operational capacity of what it actually is reviewing. I'm interested to see how to elevate that design principle with this functionality.
Well, what I'm hoping, let me just share my screen again real quick. You might have heard in the heyday of Apple with Steve Jobs, right? They would talk about Steve Jobs having taste. And so as a human being, I don't really want to click 9 cards and verify that they all flip over. Like, it's something that has to be done, but I don't want to waste my time with that if I don't have to. I would rather do the high level design of this game. Actually, so let me go back here. Let me show you the original prompt. Here's how I made the game, right? So I said, I've got a big job for you. Create a plan first. I have here an empty Vite project. I want to create a client-side single-page app that is the game of memory on a 3x3 grid. I want an SVG for the back of the cards that looks like tarot cards, and SVGs for the front of the cards that look like the 9 planets. When running the game, pick 4 planets and display each planet twice, with one card being a card showing an empty space full of stars. To win the game, you have to click all 4 pairs of planets, and there's no losing state. So that's what I used to generate this, and it's about making it nice, right? The cool tarot card backgrounds and the planet SVGs and deciding if it's going to be planets at all. This high level taste that we humans have I'm hoping is where we end up being in the loop.
Yeah. It's got nice animations and hover states of the cards, and presumably Claude did most of the work to make that.
Yeah. And that's what I want to guide. Make sure it's clickable, the unit tests, make sure the game you can win the game and that sort of stuff. And we don't have to worry about that ever. We can spend a lot of our time and our thought right on the higher level
Yeah. You
game.
can think about game design or
Yeah.
app design, like how it should work, and you know how to get into the nitty-gritties of making that hover animation.
And I think we've had this experience where like the more vague you are with Claude, you don't know what you're going to get. So if you just say, I want a game of memory, you'll probably just get like black squares on a white background or something. And it technically works. But when you describe it, right, as a game designer, that's the fun part. And the human is still in that loop.
It can be fun to be vague too, because you might get like a happy accident surprise of making something that you weren't expecting that's actually fun or cool that you.
I was thinking it's, if you watch those behind the scenes of how movies are made, right, like Steven Spielberg or whatever, they have the storyboard artist and they'll make 10 versions of a scene and the director comes in, that version is the best. So we could use Claude for that, right? Make me 10 themes for my memory game, for example. Oh, I like the planet one, right? Go with planets.
Yeah, very cool.
The reason I like Playwright specifically for the browser stuff, I mean, it's primarily front end, but you could test and prove out back end stuff too using end to end wise, using the browser to prove that an API is working. I think we've had this conversation maybe on one of our podcasts before, but there's like Philip, you just gave an example of a prompt, right? You gave it for this app. Fairly
Mhm.
simple for it to accomplish, right? But we have recognized that there are boundaries, right? There's a complexity level that Claude hits and it has problems overcoming, right? Especially on one try, right? That's where our intervention comes in. But Claude becomes more and more successful the more you can allow it to iterate and resolve and work on itself, right? So if you can provide the loop to where it can start from a specification, right? Your prompt, write an implementation, and then verify it, right? And then take those learnings and then adjust. That's when it has the most success and
Yeah.
gets you the
Yeah.
closest. So the fact that we've got tools like Playwright that Claude can implement to close that loop is super powerful and super valuable for being able to like really accelerate quality production, right? And quality work.
I have a question for you. What would you estimate when you're developing, right? Is the amount of time you spend making your software work at all versus the time you spend making it good? And I think if we can remove the working part, where it's just, of course it'll work, Claude tested it and all that stuff, right? You get that feedback loop so much faster where you just have a working app and now you want to make it good, make it fun, make it look good, make it easy, friendly for the user. But we spend, I don't know, at least half the time, I think, more than that, maybe 75% of the time, just making it work at all. And then if we're lucky, we have time to go and iterate and make it better and better. And it would be great if we had the confidence, right? Not 100%, but maybe 75% confidence that whatever Claude did works. That's fantastic.
No, I love that point that you make there, Philip, because as someone who very much is not a software engineer, I've been surprised to see how much even I can use Claude to make something decently sophisticated that works. And then it's a matter of making it good. And and then that can be very intimidating. So there's in these conversations of, oh, will AI replace all software development engineers? Even if it replaces the step of making something that works, there's a lot of skill and expertise that goes into making something good and usable.
I'm finding too, there's a little bit of a slippery slope, right? Because now, Philip, you're exactly right. You can have something working, right, relatively quickly, but then the iterations almost let your imagination and your taste run wild, right? Okay, like I just needed a modal that displays a list, but now I got that working in no problem. But now I can make this modal more of a command palette, and I can have it do this functionality and I can abstract it in this way and make it reusable and functional in different parts of the apps, right? So now I've exploded the time that I may have saved by delivering something that just works, right? To now having a little bit of the luxury to make it better, harder typed and tested and storyboarded, but also more good. The game, then it's a matter of, okay, is it better to have the velocity and give the stuff that just works that maybe would have been delivered before? Or is there a lot of value in having the higher quality pieces for the same amount of time? That's interesting what to navigate. And I guess too, when to decide to make that, like what's important to do the hard stuff versus what is good enough to go in for an MVP or a prototype or an edge of functionality that's not really going to be used a whole lot.
Let's continue the game analogy, right? Because to your point, I think what's going to happen is that the floor and the ceiling is going to be raised. So if you think about The Legend of Zelda on the NES, it took a company, right, Nintendo, a big corporation, to make that game in the 80s. And nowadays, today, without AI, right, one indie game developer can make these pixel art video games that are more advanced than Zelda, right? But one person today can't make like a 3D Halo, right, open world sort of game still. But imagine AI. You say, AI, build me a forest, build me a continent, right, or something like that. And maybe 10 years from now, you have one person, one indie developer making an open world 3D game, right? And so the floor and the ceiling is going to be raised. And that just means that 10 years from now, the companies are going to be making even bigger and more comprehensive games, right? So I think that's how it's going to work, right? There's 100 times as many video games now as there was in the 80s. So when they say that AI is going to replace programmers, I think AI is going to 100-fold the number of programmers, but in this different way.
Yeah, good point.
So Josh, you're now a programmer, and you're going to be making the next Legend of Zelda. It's going to be awesome.
If I could go back in time and tell 12-year-old Josh that, I think they would be over the moon. Fantastic.
Awesome. We'll wrap here. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Josh. See you,
Yeah,
Scott.
it's
Thanks,
fun.